be very short. I just want to say a few remarks about why, agriculture is the coolest business you ever found. Africa simply got it wrong a lot of times with agriculture. Because in the past, agriculture, yes, was the backbone. Most countries were dependent on agriculture. But when many of the countries found oil, they forgot all about agriculture, right? And so here we are, government were underinvesting in agriculture over time. The areas where I think it's very important is, look at me, I wear glasses. If my glasses are the wrong lenses, I can't see. Well, I think that we need to change our lenses on how we look at agriculture. It's not a development activity at all. It's also not a social sector. It's a business. It can lift hundreds of millions of people out of poverty. I think that's the critical thing that governments have to realize. The second thing that I think governments have to change with regard to agriculture is that when we talk agriculture, we're only talking production. We've got to talk the entire value chain. Take the case of cocoa today. How do you explain that Africa produces 75% of the world's cocoa, but it gets only 2% of a $100 billion chocolate market? How do you explain the fact that you produce a lot of cotton? The price of cocoa is going down, but Barry Callebaut just declared his highest profit ever off the back of a bad performance of cocoa prices in Africa. So for us as a bank, we've taken the decision that we are going to back African countries to industrialize agriculture, to add value to every single thing that you produce. The secret of wealth of nations is very clear. Wealthy nations process what they have. Poor nations sell raw materials, and they are always subject to all those global volatilities. So we as a bank, we're going to put in $24 billion over the next 10 years into agriculture with Jennifer and our teams and so on. But we are going to back agriculture as a business. And the last thing I want to say is that often when people say agriculture, they leave it to the Minister of Agriculture. No. Agriculture is central to how we are going to get macroeconomic and fiscal stability of our countries. And therefore, we must recognize that if you're spending $110 billion a year importing what you should be producing and exporting, that's the wrong thing. So our ministers of finance have to back agriculture, because that's the only way in which we can lift hundreds of millions of people.
Are they getting it? Are they backing agriculture?
Absolutely they are. If you look in this meeting, several of our governors are here, and we are talking about that. We've actually set up something with the central bank governors also of Africa. But I've come to realize that when they lend to agriculture, things happen, right? So agriculture is the future, and I think that it's a different kind of agriculture. It's agriculture as a business that is the future for Africa. Look. If you take a look at Kellogg's Foundation, Kellogg's was set up by a man called Kellogg's, and Ada Osakwe got a master's from, I think you went to Kellogg Management School? Right, yeah. MBA in Kellogg Management School. But you will not have been able to go there if Kellogg wasn't selling corn. How many of you eat breakfast with, you like to have breakfast cereal? Let me just see. Yeah, cornflakes. Everybody eats cornflakes, right? Well, cornflakes is basically just extruded maize. Somebody just extruded the maize, added a little bit of sugar and a little bit of some vitamins to it, and then you have cornflakes. And then he became a billionaire just selling you cornflakes. It tells you that agriculture is a money-making business. I think people always pass gold by. They see gold, they think gold is dirt. Let me tell you why agriculture should be given a lot of attention. First and foremost is the fact that if you look at the amount that Africa is spending just importing food, makes no sense. $35 billion a year. If we do nothing, that will rise to $110 billion a year by 2025. Now, I know people like oil and gas, but I don't know how many of you drink oil. I don't know how many of you also smoke gas, but certainly everybody eats food. And so agriculture is the thing that we should be doing. Africa should be producing food, should be a global player in food and agriculture. Africa has no business importing food, as far as I'm concerned. And the reason is because 65% of all the land to feed the world by 2050 is in Africa. So what Africa does with agriculture today will determine the future of food in 2050. Secondly, I want to say about agriculture is the size of the food and agribusiness itself. That business will rise to $1 trillion by 2030. $1 trillion. And so if you're looking at a sector where you're going to invest in and make a lot of money, that is the sector where you will have $1 trillion being there. And the third thing I want to say about agriculture as a lucrative business is, you know, one of our speakers, Aliko Dangote was supposed to be here, but I think it's got a little bit of some challenges with his aircraft or things like that. But I wanted to say something about it if he was here. When I was Minister of Agriculture, Ada Ozakwe was one of my senior advisors for, in fact, she was my senior advisor for investments in agribusiness. I remember one day Aliko Dangote, who is Africa's richest man, walked into my office. He banged the door. Said, Minister, I was Minister of Agriculture. And he and I used to disagree a lot because he was our largest importer of food. And I wanted him to be our largest producer of food. And he came in, he said, well, Minister, I've changed my mind. I said, well, what are we going to disagree about again? He said, I changed my mind to being a local producer. I said, what does that mean? He said, I've decided to put in $300 million into agriculture in Nigeria for rice production and rice processing. I said, hallelujah, great. I went home, told my wife, this is my best day as Minister of Agriculture in Nigeria. We started working, Martin Fregene and others that are here, to help him. 3 months after, he came to me and said, Minister, I changed my mind. I said, why? What have I done wrong? He said, I changed my mind because your business model is the right model, the right policies. I've changed my mind from $300 million to $1 billion. Now, if the richest black man in the world is betting on agriculture, doesn't that tell you that that's the sector to go? So you can't really talk about agriculture as a lucrative business. That's the way to go. The last thing I want to say about this is that I have said it before that young people are going to be the future of agriculture in Africa. And they must see agriculture as cool, as a business. And Dr. Sanginga is here from the Director General of IITA, who is doing a fantastic job of young people in agriculture. We must make agriculture so cool, because that's where you make a lot of money. It's going to be in agriculture. I firmly believe that the future millionaires and billionaires of Africa are not going to come from oil and gas sector. They're going to come from the agriculture sector. So therefore, we must change our approach to agriculture. It's not a development sector. It's not a social sector. It's a business. And the faster Africa looks at it as a business, the better Africa will be in terms of conserving foreign exchange, in terms of transforming rural areas, and creating future billionaires that Africa should have coming from agriculture. I know we'll hear a lot from these people, but thank you all for being here. Nothing could be more important. Thank you. But let me say that a number of great things are happening for agriculture in Africa. You take a look today at a place like Kenya. Kenya is probably one of the third largest countries when it comes to export of horticulture produce. You look at Ethiopia, what has happened there with floriculture. This is really a great success story. You're from Kenya, I think.
No, Uganda.
Uganda, okay. Now, that's from the Matoke country. You see what's going on there with a lot of what you have in oil palm, the plantations you have there, and all of that. So great success stories exist all across Africa with regard to agriculture. But most cases is when they take agriculture as a business. Recently, if you look at Ethiopia, Ethiopia set up a big zone called Hawassa Zone, in which they've been able to attract companies to process leather, right? And they make it into shoes and all of that. Very, very successful. So that's that. But if you look at some of the critical areas that we have to invest in, I think first and foremost is we've got to get finance to work for agriculture. I can tell you a lot about it, more than myself. Getting finance to work, especially long-term finance, is what we need in agriculture. And that has to work. The second thing I think is going to be very critical for us is, we at the bank, we are supporting something called staple crop processing zones. So these are vast agricultural zones that we want to enable with power, water, roads, ICT infrastructure. Why is that important? No private sector is going to go into a rural area in which they have to do roads themselves, right? Where they have to make power themselves and things like that. So when you enable those areas with the infrastructure, I think we should then get the private sector to come in there and set up food processing plants that would process all of what Africa produces, create market access for the farmers there, create jobs, reduce post-harvest losses, entirely transform those rural economies. From what they are today, they are zones of economic misery to zones of economic prosperity. I think that's important. The last thing I want to say that must change about the success story in agriculture is, and Chiji can tell you quite a bit about it, and Dr. Sanginga of IITA, the bank invested $800 million last year to support a new generation of young farmers and agribusiness people like Ada, although Ada is now a little bit older than, she's graduated a little bit. But these young people have terrific ideas. They just need financing behind them. I think these are some of the things that we want to support, and we want to also support we're supporting a program called Affirmative Finance Action for Women in Africa. Because believe me, women, they are the force in Africa. They make things happen in Africa. I know that. I supervise a PhD student, Dr. Sanginga's brother. Dr. Sanginga, you should get up. You should see you. Yeah, he's Director General of IITA, the International Institute of Tropical Agriculture. His junior brother, I supervised his PhD thesis, I think in 1995 or 96, somewhere there. He went to the north of Nigeria, saw women producing soya beans. And in his thesis, he came in the defense of his thesis. He said, he interviewed a woman, and that woman said, I buy a lot of soybeans, I process soybean, I built my house, I buy good clothing, I send my kids to school, my kids are healthy. Soybean is my husband. What else do you need in a husband? So it just tells you if you empower women, you can make big things happen. Maybe men can be extinct.
I really like the fact that you brought up young people, and I'm going to tie two questions into one because I know that you're pressed for time. Young people, access to finance. The age of access is a real problem. I know $800 million. That $800 million is likely to have gone through intermediaries. And gaining access through those intermediaries, it is itself a challenge. So I'm just wondering how again, you plan to make sure that these young people that you believe in so much actually have access to the money that you have.
Yeah, great question. What we're trying to do is, if you take young people that go to a bank, right? And if you are 21 years old, they will tell you, please go and bring your receipts or tax receipt for the last 40 years. And so the banking system isn't really well set up for supporting the ideas of young people. So at the African Development Bank, what we are doing is we're providing facilities out of that 800 million. I think, Chiji, almost 70% of it will go into commercial banks to reduce their risk of lending directly for young people.
Will you make sure they actually do that?
Because we're going to make sure, believe me. Yeah, we've done this when I was minister in Nigeria. We set up a facility to de-risk the agricultural lending lending to agricultural sector by all banks in Nigeria. People said it wasn't going to work and so on. We put up a facility of $350 million that reduced the risk of lending by banks to the agricultural sector. We leveraged $3.5 billion, and it's been almost 6 years now. I left as minister 2 years ago. Default rate, less than 1% consistently. So it tells me that the perceived risk is the key. It's not the real risk of lending. So if you can deal with that, I think you can do most of those things.
Let's give a round of applause to President Adesina. Thank you very much for your input to interventions and for talking to us. We appreciate your time. Now,